Hi everyone, it's Kris, Hicks, Head of Press Communication at UKIP. I'm joined once again with Carl Benjamin. We're talking about the issues of the day. The next development, it seems like David Lammy's put his foot in his mouth again on the social media. He's criticised the journalist Stacey Dooley, who's gone out to do the comic relief project. She's gone out to Africa, effectively.
Uganda specifically.
Right, Uganda specifically, raising money for impoverished communities out there. But Mr. Lammy seems to have a problem with that, doesn't he? He said that the world doesn't need any more white saviours.
Well, I'll give you some quotes that Sky have presented for us. I mean, this is just, it's the height of left-wing bigotry, in my opinion, and it comes from, specifically, a remarkable position of privilege. So David Lammy said that these weren't personal comments, but he had a problem with British celebrities being flown out to Africa by Comic Relief to make films which send a distorted image of the continent and perpetuate an old idea from the colonial era. He said, "The world does not need any more white saviours. As I've said before, this just perpetuates tired and unhelpful stereotypes. Comic Relief has a huge platform and privilege, and it is the first and major way children learn about Africa. They only show Africans as helpless victims to be pitied. Children miss the broader picture of huge progress in Africa. Comic Relief should be helping to establish an image of African people as equals to be respected rather than helpless victims to be pitied. It would therefore be better for people who actually live there to speak about the continent that they know. Many black Brits feel deeply uncomfortable with Comic Relief's poverty porn. It's my job to represent their views, however uncomfortable." How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, where to start on that kind of statement? I mean, Comic Relief, from what I can see, does a lot of good for, you know, many countries throughout the world. Certainly, one thing that's been pointed out in regards to this is one of the key figures who really started Comic Relief was Lenny Henry, of course, who was a black comedian who's worked with it for many years. So, you know, I never thought. I mean, Lammy puts his foot in his mouth, but I mean, this is like he's gone down to the knee on this one, hasn't he?
He really has. So, the first thing that springs to mind for me is how happy the Ugandans seem to be receiving her and her aid. I mean, I looked at some of the pictures. I mean, obviously they're only show the good pictures, but I mean, these kids look thrilled that there were people, you know, from foreigners taking an interest in helping them out, presumably giving them money to build wells and houses and all this sort of thing. But I mean, secondly, like, David Lammy seems to be against the very idea of Comic Relief even helping anyone. I mean, it's an obvious axiom of fundraising for charity that you have to present the negative things that you're trying to raise charity to stop. You know, if they go there and show examples of, I mean, you know, Africa has great cities, obviously, you know, and if they show skyscrapers and wealthy black men in business suits, I mean, obviously people from the West are not going to start giving them money.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, they're not the people who need help.
Yeah, quite. I mean, look, I mean, what is he actually saying then? That, you know, I mean, Uganda is a poor country compared to most nations. Is he saying then that we should just sugar pill the entire view of the country and say, well, actually, it's, you know, it's a massively successful economic powerhouse. Give it more money. You know, it's just a total absurdity, surely.
Exactly. It's not going to incentivize anyone to donate because they're not going to see anyone suffering. Why would they do it? If you know, people have to at least be able to see that there is a problem there to try and solve. But in the pursuit of equality, as Lammy said, he thinks that they shouldn't be represented this way. And it's like, okay, but what you're saying is you want to misrepresent the situation in the country in order to try and give black people better PR. But the thing is, I don't think anyone, I personally don't consider, like, an impoverished African country to be representative of Western black people. And that seems to be how Lammy is presenting this, as if he has some kind of, like, as if this is a personal effect or for British black communities or something like that. And I think that's the height of privilege, for him to sit in a first world country as an elected MP who gets £80,000 odd a year in addition to whatever he gets, and then says, no, don't try and encourage people to send money to an impoverished African country that is not complaining about being sent this money. They seem thrilled about it because I don't like the way you're advertising to get this. I mean, that is unbelievably entitled. It's like, David, it's just not your business how comic relief does this. There's no question that this is a demonstrable moral good. And the people from Uganda are not complaining in any way, shape or form about the way they're doing it. It's you, from your position, your ivory tower, your position of privilege, laying claim to their identity as part of your own. It's disgraceful.
Absolutely. And the real question is, why now? And if he's going to go for... Because Comic Relief have been doing this kind of thing for decades at this point.
In response to David Lammy condemning the white saviour complex that Comic Relief apparently have with Stacey Dooley, they tweeted out, "We really are grateful that Stacey Dooley, an award-winning and internationally acclaimed documentary maker, agreed to go to Uganda to discover more about the projects the British people have generously funded there and make no apologies for this. She has filmed and reported on challenging issues around the world, helping to put a much-needed spotlight on issues that affect people's lives daily. In her film, people working with or supported by Comic Relief projects tell their own stories in their own words. We have previously asked David Lammy if he would like to work with us to make a film in Africa, and he has not responded. The offer is still open." Now that's an amazing response. It's at once kind of sassy, but also really highlights the fact that David Lammy is speaking purely from a conceptual position. You know, he wants it viewed as equality. You know, she's the white savior. These are ideas, whereas they're specifically speaking to the physical, demonstrable good that they have managed to do. You know, they'll be able to point to, you know, infrastructure and how, you know, quantifiable improvements to people's lives. David Lammy is not speaking to that at all, and that, in my opinion, their statement is so much more stronger than his in this regard, and because of the way that they're framing it. And I love the fact that they're like, hey, our offer's open if you want to go. But David Lammy has snubbed them, and this is apparently not the first time he's done it either. But yeah, as ITV News reported, David Lammy has snubbed them and is not interested in taking them up on this, which I find is very interesting how the offer's there, David. Yeah. If you actually cared about what was going on in Africa, you would actually be interested in interfacing with Comic Relief and going there and doing something. But that's not what this is about. This is about how David Lammy feels about what's going on. He doesn't care what's happening in Africa, he cares what's happening in Britain and the perception of Africa from Britain. I mean, just the term Africa, the way he just homogenizes an entire continent. Now, there are no like Arab North Africans, you know, there are no white Africans now. Now it's just a continent full of black people who have no tribal differences, no racial differences, no cultural differences. As far as Lammy's concerned, Africa means black people. That's it.
It's just, I'm always very cynical about whenever a politician makes any particular type of public statement. I mean, does Mr. Lammy actually think this will get any votes for him? Or is it, you know, is it the ideological blinkers? Does he actually believe this nonsense? And
I believe he believes it.
Right, well, that's
I genuinely, I mean, he's got too much of a consistent history of black identitarianism for me to not think that he believes this. I think he really does. In fact, I think it's at the point where he can't not see it. I think he's that deep into it, personally. Obviously, he's in no danger in his own constituency because he has a huge majority there, because I suppose there are people there who think like him. But I personally find Lammy to be quite a reprehensible public figure, and I do my best to just laugh at him whenever I can.
Well, this is the new Labour Party, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, they've totally sold out on the old working class. It's all about identity politics. Yep. What kind of future does Labour have? Well, if David Lammy is going to be running that prospect, there aren't many prospects available from that.
At this point, Labour's future is entirely intersectional. There is no rooting this ideology out of the Labour Party at this point. And I mean, it's the intersectional ideology that is the root of the anti-Semitism in Labour. It's the root of the black identitarianism, and it will always. It's the root of I can't remember the name of the woman now. The racial and the sexual politics that are being espoused by the police. It is intersectionality that is causing all of these social ills, and it won't stop.